There's something deeply unsettling about the idea that someone you love could be under the influence of a force so evil, so contrary to all that is good, that it brings confusion and darkness not just into their life, but into yours as well. The concept that evil, in its subtlety, could be at work within a loved one's spirit, twisting their thoughts and actions, is a deeply troubling thought. It's the kind of thing that makes your stomach churn when you first hear it, but it's also the kind of thing you can't entirely dismiss from your mind once it takes root. Now, I know this may sound like a strange thing to suggest, but I ask you to bear with me for a moment as we walk through this together, for this is no simple matter. It is one that calls for more than just worldly solutions. The matter of the heart, the spirit, and the soul of another, particularly someone close to us, is never just a matter of a passing inconvenience or a slight misunderstanding. No, it is a matter of deep spiritual consequence. And so, the stakes are high. We've all heard the age-old adage that love conquers all. In the face of evil, in the face of difficulty, in the face of betrayal or hurt, we are often reminded of this truth, that love is the great remedy. But what happens when that love itself seems to be under siege? What happens when the one you hold dear, the one you trusted, the one you believed you could build your life with, suddenly seems to be moving further and further away from the values you once shared? What happens when, despite all your love, despite all your effort, something sinister creeps into their spirit, something that pulls them and you further away from peace? There are times in life when we are faced with what we can only describe as a spiritual battle. It may not be a battle with swords or shields, not one fought with words or physical force, but a battle nonetheless. This battle is fought in the quiet places of our hearts, in the deep recesses of our minds, and in the unseen parts of our souls. The devil, we are told, is a deceiver, a liar, a manipulator, and it is in the quiet corners of our relationships, in the moments of fear or weakness, that he often strikes. But how does this happen? How do we find ourselves in this situation where a beloved husband, once so full of life and joy, now appears to be under some kind of dark influence? The truth is, this is not a simple occurrence. It's not the result of a single choice or a single event, but rather a gradual erosion that happens over time, a slow shift in direction that begins imperceptibly, but which ultimately leads to a very real spiritual crisis. It starts, as it often does, with a small crack in the foundation. Perhaps there is something small, something seemingly insignificant, that begins to alter the way your husband sees the world. It might be a fleeting thought, a passing conversation, or an idea that he picks up without much thought. But as the days go by, this thought begins to take root. It becomes a pattern, a belief, a lens through which he begins to view everything around him. And before long, this small shift becomes a chasm. The way he reacts to situations changes. The way he speaks changes. The way he views you and your relationship changes. Now, this is where things start to get tricky. It would be easy to attribute these changes to simple human frailty, to stress, or to some passing phase of life. But if we look deeper, we might begin to see a pattern, a series of events that suggest something more sinister is at play. This is not to say that your husband has suddenly become a demon himself, or that he is fully under the sway of evil in a dramatic and overt sense. No, the work of the devil is far more subtle, far more insidious than that. The devil does not always come with horns and a tail, with fire and brimstone. He often comes disguised as something good, something desirable, something that promises fulfillment but ultimately leads to destruction. In the case of your husband, it may not be an outright rejection of faith or goodness, but rather a slow and steady drift away from them. Perhaps it begins with a subtle cynicism toward others, or a growing bitterness toward the things he once held dear. Perhaps it begins with a retreat from the things that once brought joy, a disinterest in family, in love, in community. And as this gradual shift occurs, the impact on your relationship is profound. What was once a shared vision, a mutual understanding, becomes a place of conflict, of misunderstanding, and even of resentment. You may find yourself increasingly alienated, wondering why the man you married seems so distant, so changed, so unrecognizable. And in your heart, you may begin to ask, what happened? How did we get here? The answer is not always easy to find. It's not always clear where things went wrong, or why your husband seems to be under the sway of forces he cannot even name. But the truth is that we are all susceptible to such forces. We all have a nature that is capable of being bent, twisted, and influenced by things that lie beyond our comprehension. But before we fall into despair, before we believe that all hope is lost, there is something we must remember. There is something that must never be forgotten. The battle is not over. The power of good, the power of love, the power of faith remains at our disposal. And while the devil may be subtle, he is not invincible. And while your husband may seem lost in the fog of his own thoughts and influences, he is not beyond redemption. No one is. The key lies in what we do next. You see, the first step in fighting back is not to confront your husband in anger, nor to blame him for the changes you are seeing. Anger and frustration only add fuel to the fire of conflict. The first step is spiritual, and it requires something far more difficult: humility. You must come before God, not just for your husband, but for yourself. You must pray not just for his deliverance, but for your own strength, your own patience, and your own guidance. In times like these, it is easy to feel isolated, as though you are facing this battle alone. But the truth is, you are never alone in these moments. There is power in prayer, power in seeking God's wisdom, power in calling upon the strength that comes from Him alone. And it is through this process, through turning toward God, that you will find the clarity and the peace to face the challenge ahead. Next, it is important to remember that this battle is not one fought in the realm of physical confrontation alone. This is a battle of the spirit, and it requires spiritual weapons. You must guard your own heart and mind, lest you too fall prey to the same forces that are attempting to pull your husband astray. Strengthen your own faith, deepen your own relationship with God, and seek out the support of those who share your values, your beliefs, and your vision for what a marriage should be. You must also speak truth to your husband, but do so with love. It is not enough to simply rebuke him or to tell him what is wrong. No, you must speak the truth with compassion, understanding, and patience. There will be moments when he will not listen, moments when he will reject your words, but do not be disheartened. It is not always our words that bring change, but the quiet witness of our lives, the example we set, the faith we hold fast to even in the darkest of times. Evil, when it manifests in a person's life, rarely comes in a form that is immediately recognizable. It doesn't often show itself as a grand dramatic event, something that immediately demands attention or signals danger. Instead, it tends to creep in slowly, almost imperceptibly, like a subtle shadow that grows ever darker the longer it is left unchecked. In the context of intimate relationships, such as marriage, this subtlety becomes even more dangerous, for it operates in ways that can easily be mistaken for something else: misunderstandings, personal struggles, or natural phases of life. The nature of evil, particularly when it comes to spiritual or demonic influence, is often to operate behind the scenes. It doesn't announce itself with loud horns or fiery signs. Rather, it enters through small, seemingly insignificant cracks in the foundation of a person's thoughts and beliefs. It starts with a simple thought, perhaps a fleeting idea that doesn't seem harmful at first, a momentary dissatisfaction with life, or a disagreement that feels like nothing more than a passing disagreement. These thoughts and feelings, however, can quickly fester and grow into something much more destructive if not checked early on. When evil operates in this subtle way, it changes a person's internal world without them realizing it. At first, it might seem harmless, maybe even beneficial, as it encourages someone to see the world differently, perhaps to adopt a more cynical view, to withdraw from relationships, or to begin questioning deeply held values. What once seemed like a strong moral foundation becomes shaken, and the shift happens so gradually that the individual may not even recognize it at first. In a marriage, this subtle erosion can be even more dangerous because it often manifests as emotional distance, miscommunication, or a slow disengagement from shared commitments and values. Small lies are told, small betrayals occur, and a little bit of resentment builds, all of which contribute to a widening gap between partners. The person affected by the subtle influence of evil may not even be aware of the change. They may believe their feelings are justified, that they are simply reacting to the situation at hand, without realizing they are being subtly led down a darker path. One of the most insidious aspects of this subtlety is that it doesn't feel like an overt choice to embrace evil. Often, it's not that a person actively decides to turn against what is good. Instead, they are led there step by step, without realizing that each small choice is steering them further away from the truth. In a marriage, this might look like one partner becoming more dismissive of the other, or slowly adopting a worldview that contradicts their shared value. It could involve withdrawing emotionally or growing resentful of the other's needs. Over time, this can erode the connection between the couple, and the relationship, once filled with love and mutual respect, begins to feel more strained, less harmonious. The problem is, in this gradual process, it's easy for the person being influenced to justify these small changes. They may begin to believe that they are simply reacting to external circumstances, or that they have every right to feel angry, bitter, or indifferent. They might convince themselves that they are being rational, or that they are in the right, but all the while the influence of evil is operating beneath the surface, guiding them further away from truth, from goodness, and from love. The most dangerous part of this subtle influence is that, unless the person is alert and self-aware, they may not recognize the shift until it has already caused significant damage. The gradual nature of evil's work makes it almost invisible until the consequences become apparent in the form of broken relationships, loss of trust, or spiritual emptiness. The insidiousness of it lies in its ability to slowly twist and distort reality, making something harmful appear to be perfectly reasonable, even desirable. This is why awareness and vigilance are crucial. One must be ever watchful for the small changes, the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that begin to take root. And when those shifts start, one must act quickly, turning to spiritual tools like prayer, reflection, and seeking guidance from trusted sources. If left unchecked, the subtle work of evil can transform a once healthy relationship into one characterized by distrust, division, and pain. But if caught early, these small cracks can be mended. The influence can be countered, and the relationship can be restored. The battle of the spirit is not a fight that is visible to the human eye. It is a war waged in the unseen, in the deepest recesses of the soul and mind. Unlike physical battles where opponents stand face to face, this battle takes place within the heart, in the quiet moments of reflection, and in the choices we make when no one is looking. It is not fought with swords or shields, but with thoughts, emotions, and the integrity of our spirit. In a marriage or any close relationship, this battle is fought constantly, and the stakes are incredibly high, as it determines the course of the relationship and the spiritual well-being of those involved. At its core, the battle of the spirit is a fight for one's soul. It is a battle between light and darkness, good and evil, truth and deception. And just as in any other battle, the outcome depends largely on how prepared one is for the fight. In a world where distractions are constant and the pull of negative influences can seem overwhelming, this battle requires great vigilance, inner strength, and spiritual awareness. In the context of a marriage, this battle becomes particularly crucial because the very foundation of the relationship is rooted in mutual trust, love, and shared values. These are the things that bind two people together, creating a union of spirits that should reflect harmony and peace. But when one or both individuals begin to face spiritual battles, whether they be doubts, temptations, bitterness, or pride, those spiritual forces can begin to disrupt that harmony. It's not always an immediate or obvious shift. Instead, it's more like a slow erosion of the connection between the partners as each individual begins to face internal struggles that, if left unchecked, can eventually spill out into the relationship itself. These internal struggles can manifest in many ways. For example, a husband may begin to experience doubts or frustrations that are rooted in spiritual conflict. These doubts may start small, perhaps a fleeting thought or a questioning of faith, but if not addressed, they can grow into a profound internal battle. Similarly, when the wife senses a growing distance or emotional coldness in her partner, it's not always because of something external. It's because of a deeper internal struggle that is being fought beneath the surface. The spirit of one partner may be in turmoil, and that turmoil, though invisible, has a direct effect on the other. This is why the battle of the spirit in a relationship is so significant. It affects everything. It affects communication, trust, empathy, and love. When both partners are spiritually aligned and attuned to each other's needs, the relationship can thrive even through difficulties. But when one or both individuals are embroiled in a spiritual struggle, it can lead to division, misunderstanding, and emotional distance. It's essential, therefore, for each person in the relationship to recognize that their own spiritual health directly impacts the health of the marriage. The battle of the spirit is not fought only by external circumstances or the actions of others. It is something we must actively engage in within ourselves. When we are spiritually grounded, we bring peace and stability to our relationships. But when we are spiritually vulnerable, we open the door to confusion, doubt, and even demonic influence. The question then becomes, how do we fight this battle? The answer, as daunting as it may seem, is not found in confrontation or force, but in surrender. Surrendering ourselves to God's guidance and power, the battle is fought by cultivating a strong spiritual foundation rooted in prayer, self-reflection, humility, and love. Prayer is perhaps the most powerful tool in this battle, for through it we draw strength from a higher power, receive clarity, and are reminded of the truth that guides us. But prayer alone is not enough. It must be accompanied by actions that reflect that spiritual commitment. Each person must examine their thoughts and attitudes, repent for any negativity or pride, and work to restore harmony with their spouse. In a marriage, it's also essential for both partners to recognize that the battle of the spirit is not a solitary one. While each individual must fight for their own spiritual health, the relationship itself is a shared journey. The partners must support one another, help each other recognize when the spirit is in turmoil, and pray together for strength, peace, and restoration. When both spouses are actively engaged in this spiritual battle, they create a powerful bond, one that is resilient in the face of external struggles and fortified by their mutual commitment to each other and to God. When faced with a situation where a loved one seems to be drifting away from the shared values and connection of a marriage, it's easy to become overwhelmed by emotions, frustration, hurt, and even anger. The natural human response to being hurt or betrayed is often to lash out, to demand answers, or to seek retribution for the emotional pain caused. However, if there's one thing that can truly make a difference in moments of spiritual or relational conflict, it is the power of love and compassion over anger. Anger, when left unchecked, can be a force that consumes both the person who feels it and the relationship in which it exists. It's a powerful emotion, one that can cloud judgment, breed division, and lead to rash decisions. In relationships, especially one as intimate as a marriage, anger can become a poison, slowly eroding the trust and affection that have been built over time. What may begin as a natural emotional response to a perceived wrongdoing can, if not managed properly, spiral into bitterness and resentment. This is especially dangerous when one partner is under some kind of external influence, such as spiritual turmoil, that may have caused them to act in ways that are hurtful or confusing. But as difficult as it may seem in the heat of the moment, choosing love and compassion over anger is the key to both healing and resolution. While anger may feel justified, it seldom leads to healing or reconciliation. It often drives a wedge between two people, making it harder to understand each other's struggles, frustrations, or pain. When anger takes over, it clouds our ability to listen, to empathize, or to offer support. In contrast, love and compassion invite the opposite. They create space for understanding, for dialogue, and for mutual growth. They allow us to see the pain and confusion in our partner's actions, rather than simply reacting to the surface-level behaviors that are often the result of deeper issues. One of the most powerful examples of love and compassion is the way in which we choose to respond to our spouse during their moments of spiritual struggle. If they are battling with feelings of doubt, fear, or confusion, showing them compassion means recognizing that they are not their struggles, but that they are human beings, worthy of love and understanding, even in their moments of weakness. It's easy to forget this when the hurt is fresh, when the wounds feel raw and the desire for justice is strong. Yet, it is in those very moments of vulnerability that love has the power to transform not just the other person, but ourselves as well. Love and compassion also involve recognizing that your partner's struggles, whether they are spiritual, emotional, or mental, are not necessarily an attack on you. When a spouse seems to be acting distant, cynical, or hostile, it can feel personal. It can be difficult not to take it as a rejection or as an affront to everything the relationship stands for. But in truth, The internal struggles that a person faces are often not about the other person at all. They are about the turmoil within. Choosing compassion means choosing to separate your own feelings of hurt from the actions that are occurring. It means understanding that, while your partner may be struggling, that struggle is not necessarily a reflection of how they feel about you. And this recognition is essential in preventing the escalation of anger and the fracture of the relationship. When we allow anger to dictate our actions, we become reactive. We focus on defending ourselves, proving a point, or asserting our own hurt. But compassion takes a different approach. It's proactive. It seeks to understand, to heal, and to support, even in the midst of difficulty. Compassion means choosing to stand alongside your partner, not against them, even if they are temporarily lost or confused. It's the kind of love that seeks reconciliation, the kind of understanding that listens, even when it hurts. This doesn't mean that we should tolerate or ignore harmful behavior. It doesn't mean that we should stand by passively and allow our partner to continue in destructive patterns. Compassion in its true sense means speaking the truth in love, gently but firmly. It means recognizing that while your partner may need help, they are still worthy of grace and support. Love, when it is true and unselfish, seeks the best for the other, even if it involves difficult conversations or setting boundaries. Compassion doesn't mean letting someone walk all over you, but it does mean offering them the space to change, to heal, and to seek the help they need without judgment or condemnation. In the midst of the struggles that arise in relationships, especially those that are complicated by spiritual battles or external negative influences, it can sometimes feel as though the challenges are insurmountable. The weight of the emotional turmoil, the doubts, the frustrations, these all seem overwhelming, and at times it may appear as if victory is out of reach. Yet, there is a deeper, more profound truth that underlies every struggle. The ultimate victory has already been secured. This victory is not determined by the circumstances we face, or by the temporary setbacks we encounter, but by something much greater than ourselves, something eternal. The idea of ultimate victory in the context of a spiritual struggle is not one of human triumph, where we emerge victorious through sheer willpower or our own strength. Instead, it is a victory that is rooted in the divine, the assurance that, despite the challenges we face, there is a higher purpose and a greater plan at work. This victory is already assured through the grace of God, through the power of love, and through the unshakable foundation of faith that we build upon. When a marriage is under strain, when one partner seems to be drifting, or when negative spiritual influences begin to erode the connection between two people, it can be easy to feel as though the end is near, as though things may never return to the way they once were. But the truth is, the ultimate victory is not dependent on how things appear in the moment. It is not about whether or not the relationship feels whole or stable right now. It is about the recognition that God's plan for us is one of healing, restoration, and reconciliation. This ultimate victory is already secured because of the unchanging nature of God's love and grace. It is through the grace that is offered to each individual that we can find the strength to face the challenges before us. It is through the power of love, true, unconditional love, that healing can begin to take place, even in the most broken of circumstances. The victory that we are promised is not one that comes through the perfection of human effort or the eradication of all conflict, but through the power of redemption. In the context of a marriage that is facing spiritual turmoil, This means that no matter how deep the wounds may be, no matter how distant the partners may seem, the possibility of restoration is always present. The ultimate victory is not in the immediate resolution of problems, but in the recognition that, with God's help, healing and reconciliation are always possible. It is a victory that transcends the momentary frustrations and challenges of the present, offering a hope for a future that is far greater than the struggles of today. The victory is not simply one of overcoming a particular issue or conflict in the moment. It is the victory of a transformed heart. It is the victory of a person who, despite the trials they have faced, emerges stronger, wiser, and more aligned with the truth of God's love. It is the victory of a couple who, despite their differences or struggles, chooses to rebuild their relationship on a foundation of love, trust, and spiritual unity. In this way, the victory is not just about the external circumstances being fixed, but about the internal transformation that takes place when both individuals surrender to the process of healing and growth. This ultimate victory is also a victory over the forces that seek to destroy us. The spiritual forces of darkness that try to divide, confuse, and lead us away from the path of peace and reconciliation. The demonic forces that influence and distort human relationships may seem powerful, but they are ultimately powerless in the face of God's might. The victory over these forces is assured through prayer, faith, and the active resistance against the negative influences that seek to lead us astray. By focusing on the spiritual strength that comes from God, we align ourselves with a power that is greater than any force that might try to tear us down. One of the most significant aspects of the ultimate victory is the peace that comes with it. It is not a peace that is rooted in the absence of conflict, but a peace that transcends understanding, even in the midst of struggle, even when the relationship is not yet fully healed. This peace is available to those who seek it. It is a peace that comes from knowing that the battle is not ours to win alone, but that we are guided and supported by a divine strength that is far beyond our own. It is a peace that assures us that no matter how difficult the journey may be, we are never alone. The victory, in this sense, is not a destination but a process. It is the recognition that with every step forward, no matter how small, we are drawing closer to a more profound understanding of ourselves, our relationships, and our faith. The ultimate victory is not in achieving a perfect relationship, but in learning to love and forgive, to heal and grow, and to trust that no matter how difficult the battle, we are ultimately victorious through the grace and love of God. This victory is ultimately a victory over despair. It is the assurance that, no matter how impossible a situation may seem, there is always hope. When we face a relationship under strain, when spiritual battles threaten to tear us apart, we must remember that the victory has already been won. The victory is found in the enduring power of love, in the strength of faith, and in the unwavering certainty that, with God, all things are possible. In the end, the ultimate victory is not a promise of a pain-free life or a conflict-free relationship, but a promise that, through the strength of God's love and the power of spiritual resilience, we will be able to overcome any obstacle, heal any wound, and rebuild any broken part of ourselves and our relationships. It is a victory that reminds us that no matter how hard the journey may be, the path is always moving toward restoration, healing, and eternal peace. And in this truth, we can find the courage to press on, knowing that victory is already ours. In the end, what is most important is not what you see in the moment, but what you hold to in the spirit. You may not be able to change your husband's heart overnight. You may not be able to fix all the problems right away, but you can stand firm in your faith, fight back spiritually, and trust that in time your prayers and your efforts will bear fruit. This is not a battle of flesh and blood, but one that requires perseverance, prayer, and a deep, abiding faith in the goodness and power of God. And as you fight this battle, know this: you are not fighting alone. You never were,